In this video, we will review various ways to construct queries in an Access database. Also, we will review the concept of a record source for a form or a report. Before we begin, let's look at what we have on the screen. I have an insurance database called Insurance DB, and on the navigation pane on the left, notice I have 3 access objects, 3 tables: the employees table, the locations table, and the titles table. If I double click on the employees table, I open the employees table in datasheet view, and notice I have 311 records. That's 311 employees that work at this company. It is a row of information, a record of information on each employee. I also have 9 fields of information: employee ID, last name, first name, etc. Each column represents a field of information that I choose to keep on each employee. I'll close that. There's a locations table in this database. It has 11 records, 11 different locations, office locations, and each record has 6 fields of information on each location. Finally, we have a titles table in this example. There are 4 valid titles, positions that an employee could hold in this company. So 4 records of information, and each title has 7 fields of information that we keep about that title, that job title. I'll close that. I'm going to click on the Database Tools tab, click on the Relationships tab, and you'll notice the tables have relationships between them. So between the Locations table and the Employees table, we have a one-to-many relationship, meaning one location can have many employees working at that location. We also have a one-to-many relationship between the Titles table and the Employees table. So one title can be held by many employees in the company. I'll close that. So let's construct our first query. When you hear the word query, think question. When we construct a query, we are asking a question of the database. We are asking it to retrieve results that meet our criteria in a particular format. So we'll start with a simple query. We'll build it on one table, and we'll do what's called an exact match. I'm going to click on the Create tab, Query Design. The Show Table dialog box comes up. I'm going to pick the one table that I'm going to use in this query. All my fields come from the same table. So I will click on the Employees table and hit Add, the Add button. You can also double click. Notice I have in my workspace the table where I'm going to pull data from. And in the bottom part of the screen, you'll see what's called the Design Grid. And this is where I get to choose particular fields that I want to see in my results. So I'd like to see the employee ID, so I'll double click on that. The last name, the first name, the performance, and an alternate email address. My company did well this year. I want to find excellent employees, and I want to send them an email and let them know that they're going to receive a bonus for their hard work. So before I save this query, I'll just run it to show you that without any criteria in this criteria row in your design grid, you will get all 311 employees. And that makes sense. We didn't say they had to meet a specific criteria yet. So now I'll right click where it says Query 1 on the tab at the top of the query results. Go back into Design View. In the Performance column, in the criteria row, so at the intersection of that column and that row, I will type in the value for that criteria. So I'll type in excellent because I only want to see those employees that had excellent performance. I'll tab off that field. Access will surround what I typed in with quotation marks, and that indicates to me that Access is recognizing this as a text field, and that is what I wanted, so that works. I'll hit Run. And now notice I have, instead of 311 employees, I actually only have 95 employees that have excellent performance. So that's great. I'll save that. I'll call it QRY exact match. Notice when I save that query on the left in the navigation pane, now I have a new object, a query object called query exact match. So notice in my list here that I have some employees that don't have an email address. So the problem with that is those employees now I have to somehow contact in an alternative way. So I need a separate list of employees that have excellent performance and are going to receive the bonus, but do not have an email address. So the easiest way for me to do that is to click on the query that I closed the query, click on the query I've already constructed, right click, copy, and then I'll right click paste. And again, I will call this query and logic, because now instead of one criterion, I'm looking for multi-criteria results that meet multiple criteria. So I'll hit OK. I'll make sure that I actually put my cursor on the copy that I made. I'll right click and open that in design view. And now, instead of just excellent employees, on that same row, that criteria row, in the alternate email column, I will type the key phrase is null, and I'll tab off of that. When you type is null, Access is looking for a field that does not have a value. There's nothing in the field. So now we'll run this query, and notice instead of 95 results, I actually have 10 employees that have excellent performance and no email address on file. So that's an example of AND logic. You're meeting more than one criterion. I'll save that, I'll close it. Let's try a third query here. So in the third query, we want to do what's called a partial match, where I know part of what I'm looking for, but I can't match exactly. And in order to do that, we will use a wildcard. So let's assume that I have 3 offices in California. I have a San Diego office, a San Francisco office, and a Los Angeles office. And I only want to get information. I only want in my results those employees that are from an office that begins with SAN. So I want to, in essence, exclude any other California office except for the ones that begin with SAN. So in order to construct that, I'll click on Create, I'll click on Query Design. This time I'm going to use more than one table. So I'll double click on the Employees table, and I'll double click on the Locations table because I need to know where they work. I'll hit Close. I'll extend so you can see all the fields. Again, I want employee ID, last name, first name, performance, alternate email address, and this time from my locations table, I need the location field. Okay, so I still want a list of only excellent employees. So this is still AND logic, but this time I can't match exactly on where they work. So I'll type what it begins with, the SAN, and then I'll use what's called a wildcard, which is an asterisk, and then I'll tab off that field. And notice Access will construct for me what's called a like condition, and it will do a partial match. It will find any employee that has excellent performance and has an office location that starts with SAN. So let's run it. So notice in my results, we have excellent employees, 13 of them, that actually work at a location that begins with SAN. So I'll save this query, and this query I'll call query partial match. Let's create one last query and combine everything that we've done up to this point in time and add in one additional concept called OR logic. So I'll start with the query partial match. I'll right-click, copy, then I'll right-click, paste. I'll call this query OR and logic because we're going to do OR logic and we're going to do AND logic. I'll make sure that that query is selected and I'll open it in design view. So I'm opening a new office in California and I want to either consider promoting one of my excellent employees from my previous query, which was excellent employees that are in the San Diego or San Francisco office. In addition to that, I may need to just take a manager from any of my California offices and transfer him or her to the new location. So I need to add some additional criteria here. And it is an OR circumstance. So I need the titles table, and it's not in my workspace. So I could click on Add Tables and do it that way. But I can also, as a shortcut, click on Titles in my navigation pane, the Titles table, and just drag a copy of it into my workspace. And I'll move my Employees table around a little bit so you can see all three tables are now there. So from my location table, I need an additional field, which is state, because I'm looking for California managers. And from my titles table, I need actually the title name because I need to match on manager. So I'll double click on title name. Now, the difference in this query, or the additional learning here, is that I'm using what's called OR logic. So I'm going to pick from that first list that I already created, or an employee that works in California and is a manager. So this is definitely compound logic. So in the state column, in the OR row, I'll type in CA for California. And in the title name, I'll type in manager. So now in our list, every employee that shows in the list should either be an excellent employee from the San Diego or San Francisco office, or they should be a manager from any California office. So let's run it and check our results. And notice that's exactly what we get. So we already had these San Francisco and San Diego excellent employees, right? We've added in a manager from a California office, happens to be San Francisco, that's a good manager. So it didn't have to be an excellent manager. And we've added in two additional managers, both of them from the Los Angeles office. So this is an example of AND logic combined with OR logic. I'll save that. The last topic to discuss in this video is record source. When you build a report or you build a form, you are building it on some set of data. In Access, that is called the record source. So let's create a simple report. Let's build it off of the employees table. So if we create a report, we're going to click on Create. And when we build it off of a table, we will get all the fields in the table and all the records in the table. So in this case, all 311 employees would be listed in this table. And if I were actually going to produce this report and distribute it, I'd spend some time cleaning it up. I would save the report. I'll call this All Employees, RPT All Employees. Notice when I save it, I now have a new object, a report object in my navigation pane. What else I want you to notice is that once you create a report, you now have a new ribbon, Report Layout Tools, and you have the Report Layout Design tab on that ribbon. if you click Property Sheet option, this is the property sheet for every control and every object on that report. If I click in the first drop down and I select Report, now I'm looking at the report as a whole. If I look at the Data tab and I look at Record Source, notice it's employees, meaning this report was built on the entire employees table. So let's save this and close it. However, let's say I already have a query and it has the results that I want and I want to build a report off of that. Well, I don't have to build it off the table and then somehow change the table. Instead, I can build it directly from the query. So I'm going to click on Query and Logic, click Create, click Report, and you'll see that this query, this report was built off of the query I created where I was looking at excellent employees that didn't have an email address, and maybe I want to print this report so that someone can contact these employees in a different way. I'm going to save this report and call it RPT Excellent Employees, No Emails. Notice when I save it, I now have another report object in my navigation pane. Also, notice on the left, the property sheet is still up. If I click on the drop-down arrow and make sure I'm selecting the entire report, that object, click on the Data tab, notice now this report was built off of that query, which I called Query and Logic. So I hope after viewing this video, you have a better understanding of how to create queries using AND logic and OR logic, using exact and partial matches. Remember the wildcard asterisk. I hope you also have a better understanding of what a record source is and how you can tell what record source a report or a form is built on.